University. My name is Stacy Erickson-Pesetski. I'm the professor of this class, an English professor here. We are happy to welcome you all to our discussion of Acts 3 and 4 of Titus Andronicus. We have a bunch of people in our class who are just going to introduce themselves, tell us their name, what they're studying, and maybe why they're taking Shakespeare class, because we have non-English majors here. So we'll start with Ashley's next to me, so she's going to start.
Hi everybody, my name is Ashley Martin.
That's a win. Alec is also next to me.
Hi, I'm Alec Treziak. I'm a sophomore here at Manchester. I'm a double major in business management and finance, and I'm taking this class because Stacy's teaching it.
Also a valid reason. Tate, you're up next.
I'm Tate. I'm a sophomore here at Manchester. I'm a political science major. And I'm taking this class because, one, I was told it would be very useful in law school, which that's the plan, and also because it really seemed interesting.
All right, Mary.
Hi, I'm Mary. I'm an English library science major. I'm taking this class because I really like books, and I'm an English major, so I have to.
Yay! John.
I'm John Johnson. I'm a history major, and I'm taking this because it was interesting and I needed something to cover BIAs.
You have something to do. Hannah H.
Hi, I'm Hannah H. I am an English major, a philosophy major, and a Spanish minor, and I'm taking this class because it's required.
Yay! Francie and Haley.
Hi, I'm Francie. I'm a foreign exchange student from Germany, and I'm taking this class because I needed an English lit class for my degree back home, but also because it's a lot of fun, and it's with a very cool professor.
My name is Haley, and I am an English major with a writing concentration, and I'm taking Shakespeare because I have to, but Shakespeare is actually really cool, I found, so yeah.
There you go. Hannah D.
Hi, I'm Hannah Dubner. I am an elementary education major with an English minor, and I took this class because I enjoyed Shakespeare in high school, and so I thought it would be fun to take it here.
All right, and Caleb, last but not least.
Hi, I'm Caleb Knopfsinger. I am an English writing major with an art minor, and I took this class because I had to, but I do also really like Shakespeare, so it works out in the end.
There you go. And Caleb also is a Shakespearean actor, so a little shout out to Manchester's theater program right there. Okay, friends, I asked you guys to prepare something for class today, so why don't we start with that? One of the things that we think about when we're talking about Titus Andronicus, because this is a revenge tragedy, it's very violent, and there are a lot of shocking things that happen. So what I asked you to do is pick something from the first 4 acts that you think is the most problematic. And that can be anything. I have my own example, so we'll see if anyone picked what I did. But why don't you just share what you thought and tell me what you think that has to do with this sort of revenge theme in the play. So who wants to start? Caleb, go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the whole cutting off the hands.
Oh, that was mine. Okay, you already got it.
Sorry.
No, that's good.
The whole thing, I mean, I felt really bad for Titus. Like, he keeps on telling his kids that he's going to be the one. They try to, he convinces them to go away while he goes up to Aaron and is like, here, that kept them away. They're not going to give you their hand, so take mine. Mm-hmm. And then Aaron's just like, ha, you thought that was deceit. Wait till you hear this. And I just like, oh, come on, Aaron. Come on.
Well, and that'll help us talk about character development. So I will write that down. You can talk more about this cutting off hand scene? Because Ashley next to me said that she also picked that. So let's what Ashley has to add.
Okay, so this was going back to what we talked about last time with the whole. I think Titus is some sadistic freak, but when he does cut off his hands, it turns out to be a trick because then the guy shows up with two of his son's heads, and he can't do anything but laugh. And I think that's a little bit messed up, just a tad. And you can't figure out why he's laughing. And I'm like, because you're nuts.
Titus is kind of falling into a crazy, which we will also talk about when we get to character development. Did anyone else pick the cutting off the hand scene? Francie?
She picked another scene.
Okay, hold on. We'll get to you. If no one else, did anyone else pick the hand scene as I hold up my hand? Mary, you picked it too. Why did you pick it?
I found it was really interesting how they thought that by cutting off one person's hand would atone for cutting off Lavinia's hands, and it just really didn't make sense to me. Like, why do you think it's okay? It's not an eye for an eye, while that is the thing we're talking about here. Kind of.
Right. Yeah, and that I think that goes into this scene. It's both very violent. I mean, they're actually cutting off someone's hand on stage, and then they bring in two heads on stage. But it also sort of illustrates the extent that people are going through to just get this kind of revenge, right? If you do this, then they'll make this okay, and then I'll make this okay. So it's just kind of showing this cycle. Titus will do anything to win or to somehow kind of move past this. And it ends up not working out because of Aaron. So, yeah. Good. A different scene, Francie.
Not that that's any less or more upsetting, but what really upset me was when the nurse brought the baby to Aaron. That's in Act 4, Scene 2 on page 535 in the book. And it really upset me because, first of all, it's like totally out of the blue. So with the hands, it already had been a theme before, but this was so shocking. And then it also shocked me because I kind of sympathized with Aaron, which gave me very weird feelings because I could also always protect the baby. And then it shocked me because in what society is it okay to kill a baby? This was too much for me. And I like how they play with gender here because the nurse, like as a woman, tells the man to kill the baby, and the man then like steps in the protective role that's usually assigned to the woman. But it still upset me very much, and I'm glad so far that the baby still lives. We'll see about that.
Yeah, let's talk about this scene. This is, I think, a very key scene with talking about Aaron's character, and gender, like Francie mentioned, but also race, because that is brought in here with Aaron's character. So what's the circumstance with the baby? Who does the baby belong to, and what all happens with that? Francie, go.
Sorry, it took me some time to unmute. So the baby is Tamara's baby, and it's because she had cheated with Aaron. And and of course it wasn't supposed to happen because she's now married to Saturninus, and also because it's a child out of wedlock. And the only way they can track it down to Aaron is because he's the only black person around, and the child is black. Which actually, I think that's kind of inaccurate because it takes some time for a child, like biologically, to turn black. But never mind. And then Tamara tries to keep it a secret, which that kind of puzzled me because how did Saturninus not get that she was pregnant when they're married? But yeah.
Okay, yeah, good kind of summary of it. Just a couple of things with this. Remember reading the play. So the fact that 9 months have passed now, and now she has Aaron's baby, we're just supposed to believe that, right? This is a play, and we're supposed to suspend disbelief that no one knew she was pregnant, all of that. But it's very telling on a number of levels that this child cannot really exist safely. So the nurse thinks that Aaron should have killed the baby because the baby is born out of wedlock. He was born from the queen's lover and this lower class kind of other character. So the nurse says Aaron killed the baby, and Aaron is what? We can. Let's try to bring some stuff out and read out loud. Ashley has something to say next to me.
I think it's kind of funny because, well, not funny, but Aaron kind of sort of exhibits this like black power, and he's just like, black's the best, and then he's like, but I don't want you to like spread it around. You're gonna tell everybody. So he kills the nurse.
Right.
Oops.
Right. So Aaron rather than killing the baby, is to kill the nurse. What do you guys think about that?
I think it shows Aaron's selfishness. That really shows that he only thinks of himself, and I think that really shows him that he just kills a person just to save basically his skin. Because if they did find out that it was his baby, he would be hanged, and so would Tamara. So. Right.
And I think the implication is that if the baby is seen at all, they will know that it's Aaron's baby, right? So he's protecting himself. But here's the thing. I think Francie said she felt weirdly sympathetic for Aaron. At this point, let's talk about that, right? I have my book for two. Nurse brings in the baby. Okay. I have my book open to Act 42. Page 536, the nurse brings in the baby, and discusses that the baby died. And Aaron says, why must it? Right. So he's only gonna take care of his own son. So that's Aaron's plan. Does it make you sympathetic that he's protecting a baby? Or not? John.
Okay, this isn't about the question, but you keep cutting out. I missed that entire first half of what you were asking.
Okay, I will say it again. I was asking if Aaron is a sympathetic character in any way because he's protecting the baby. He kills the nurse. He helps with the violence against Lavinia and all these other people, but is there a moment of sympathy for Aaron?
I think you could say yeah, because like it shows that he has like some human side to him. Like he isn't all just blood, kill. He's like he actually does care about his family. He's sort of like just the family man put into more than that. But I mean, like in this situation, he's like, I gotta protect me and my own, and I don't care what the consequences are for anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. Good. I just wrote something down that I want to bring up. But we have one person in our class just joined in. That's an interesting topic, and tell us what she thinks about Aaron.
So I think Aaron ties together the three different cultures that are represented in this play: the Goths, the Romans, and the one more. All three of these cultures have this common thread of a parent who makes really poor choices in an effort to protect their children.
You guys back? She's talking about, and this is exactly actually what I wrote down. I wrote down fathers, right? So we've got parents here that are protecting their children, but how is that working out for them, right? Titus is the one that has his hand chopped off on stage because he thinks it's going to bring back his sons. Tamara's the one that has her sons kill people because she thinks it will bring back her dead children. So what are we doing here, right? What do we have? Take.
Well, I think if we put this in perspective of today's society, I think if we ask that question, if you're in Aaron's shoes, a lot of people would say that they would do similar things and would do anything to protect their own child. So I mean, I don't like Aaron at all. I think he's a heartless and selfish character. But I do have a little sympathy for him in this scene and this scene alone, frankly. But
It's all right. You don't have to have full sympathy. Good, Francie.
And I feel like in Shakespeare there are always like these turning points for characters, and this might be one for Aaron in the play because it adds more dimension to the character itself. And even though I do not condone any of his actions, I think we have to keep in mind that because of his race and also because of his ethnicity, because he's part of the Goths, or at least he's so closely affiliated with them, he's always been on the wrong side of things. So this, like, a lot of social factors have added, like, to make him become the man he is, and now he's standing up for his kid. And when we look at Tamara here, like, why doesn't she do anything?
Well, what did Tamara already do, though, right? Yeah. I mean, that's sort of, I think, her big parent moment, as she's taking revenge on her children by having her sons harm Lavinia, Titus's daughter. Good. And this, I mean, we can talk more about parents and father figures, too, in relation to other plays we've read. King Lear, not making the best decisions as a father. What other kind of siblings or parent figures do we have? Hint, hint, last week, siblings. What did we read last week about siblings?
A lot of them are dead. Like,
A lot of them are dead.
Because we have a lot of dead siblings.
My leading question was measure for measure with the brother and sister. So just kind of thinking about, I mean, just choices that you have to make to protect family, I think, as we're getting at here in a lot of these plays. And this actually will kind of preview the last play we're reading this semester, The Tempest, is about a father and his daughter, and he makes some decisions for her without her really getting a say in it too. So we'll keep thinking, we'll trace that through. Good. So other kind of key moments or upsetting moments, significant things, just the scene that you picked when I asked you to think about what was problematic. Anybody pick beyond the Aaron scene or the hand scene? Haley. Nope. Haley, then Tate.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I picked Lavinia's rape scene along with the mutilation just because from a feminist standpoint, it's awful that in this society, which is, I'm assuming, ancient Rome, she was looked at as being shameful for having had that done to her. But it's also really upsetting looking at how Tamora just told her sons that it was okay to do that, because when it comes to modern day feminism, it's important that girls stick together. But in this instance, you see Tamora, who had originally been in at the beginning of the play, she was at her lowest. She had just lost in the war. She just saw her child die, and now she's a character of contradictions, and now you see her being okay with her son dying with Aaron. But anyway, back to it. She's a character of contradictions, and so seeing her just turn on Lavinia, even though at the beginning she herself had been begging for mercy, and when Lavinia's asking for mercy of just being killed outright, it's awful to see how Tamora actively plays a role in allowing that to happen.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that. We talked about this last time too. That it, to me, I mean, they're the two female characters, and there's not a community of women here. So, and well, the nurse, I guess, but what happens to the nurse? Yeah. Okay. So, anyone else want to say more about that as sort of the most problematic scene? Did anyone else pick that?
Yeah, that's what I had too, and I think it prompts everything in the play, all the conflict. And I also think it shows, I know we'll talk about this later, but Lavinia's strong character. I know some people may disagree with me on that, but I think she's one of the most like the strongest character in the play.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that sets up now we have to talk about that. Let's talk about sort of these character developments, right? You can bring in any, if you didn't mention your moment yet, you can bring that in. What do you think about what Tate just said? Lavinia, strongest character in the play. Raise your hand if you agree. Me. Oh, a few people. Beth does behind me. Tate, say more about what you think, and then we'll throw it to someone else.
Well, I think it shows throughout the play her determination. I don't think she ever gives up, and she's dealing with a lot. I mean, she gets her arms cut off and her tongue cut off and raped, and she continues to help her family and is loyal to her family, and I think that's huge on her character part. So
right.
I don't see that from anyone else in this play. I feel like there's a lot of betrayal and a lot of selfishness, and I feel like Lavinia is not selfish at all.
Right. Good. Okay, Beth over here.
So even though we don't really see it directly, except for the one scene. So even though we don't see it directly, except for the one scene with Bastianus, it's hinted at that she's, before she had her tongue cut out, was this very lively, talkative, joking, very spirited person. And I think you don't necessarily see directly the development, but I think you can definitely see her maturing and the things that are highlighted about her. Like post-rape, Lavinia isn't really about these joking, sort of trivial things. She's focused more on things like communicating with her family, taking care of them. This is when you see highlighted the relationship she had with her nephew, her taking sort of that nurturing mother role, whereas before you saw her as sort of this playful maiden character.
Yeah, good. It's good to bring in the nephew as well, so we can think about that, because the nephew's afraid of her, right? I mean, he's like, that lady keeps chasing me, but she still persists, definitely. So who else? Franzi, go.
I wanted to say something about the nephew because I feel like he's just mean. She's like, she had her tongue cut out and she's mutilated, and he complains about her chasing him. Like, what? Yeah. Why? Like, I just don't get it. Like, that nephew, I got very upset with the nephew. Anyone else get upset with the nephew?
It just makes
that's
Yeah, that was all I was going to say, is that even though I never stated his age, the way he's behaving, I picture him as like, some stuff is a big word, he's really going fast, young to understand what's going on.
It's okay to be upset, Franzi. You can be upset. You can protect Lavinia. Good. Other thoughts about Lavinia as a strong character, or you can bring in the nephew too, because I think there's some interesting things to think about, because the nephew is the next generation, right? It's her brother's kid, so it's the next generation of Titus's family. Caleb.
Okay, so for me, the nephew isn't necessarily, like, I don't see him as kind of an evil, like a rude character toward Lavinia. He's just, I mean, he's a child. I mean, you think about like all the things that scare children that when you're older you're just like, I was actually scared of that? What? What is this? And in terms of Lavinia being strong, she, like, I mean, it's not just the nephew, but some of the other characters are a little bit hesitant around her, and a little bit like just on edge, and she endures it all. I mean, she just keeps going. She's still keeping up with everything, and I actually see it in Titus, the whole scene where she's revealed to him. I see a lot of that strength to be there with her father while he's trying to come to terms to what has happened.
Right. I absolutely think she is stronger than her father. We can talk about that. I see Haley's hand. So Haley, what do you got?
Okay, so to be honest, I didn't hear what you said when you were opening the topic. So what I'm going to say is just, I think she's strong because she has a strong will to let people know what happened. She was running around chasing her, or the nephew in order to get that book, The Metamorphosis, so she could explain what's happened to her. Like, she's not just going to stay silent. Even though she's mutilated, she can't communicate. She's doing whatever she can to let people know what happened to her and to make sure that the people who have done this are going to come to justice. So she's important in that aspect, and she's extremely strong-willed. Plus, you saw that when she was telling off Tamora earlier on before what happened to her happened. So that was also just a product of the time period, I would assume. But it does tie into how she has a very strong voice, and it ties into how strong of a character she is.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's a very good point that you brought up, that she's looking for the book, right? She is doing everything she can to communicate and try to tell them what happened. Kenzie.
Just to upset anyone a bit, I don't think I'm not sure if she's really strong or if the others just feel a lot of pity for her.
Or maybe it's not one or the other. Let's talk about that. What do you think about this pity? I mean, this will come in more in Act 5 as well, this whole pity thing. Tate.
I disagree, because I feel like if she was just pitied, then she wouldn't do anything. She would just sit there and mope and probably end up dying, either of emotional pain or someone would probably just kill her. And I feel like she's still trying to help, still determined. So I feel like that's why she's not just a pity character.
Okay, good.
This is more of a prediction than necessarily an analysis of what's already happened, but as far as people pitying Lavinia, I think that her forerunner is Lucretia, who is sort of redeemed in the fact that she commits suicide, and she's sort of this pinnacle figure, like, that's revered and honored, but she had to kind of kill herself to even achieve that status, whereas Lavinia is still kind of hanging around, and I think if she hasn't already, she's going to start making people uncomfortable. And that pity is just going to kind of, like, a martyr who hangs around isn't really a perfect martyr.
Okay, it's thinking about if anyone has kind of a background with the metamorphosis. Definitely something we can think about as we lead into the end. One other thing with Lavinia that I wanted to bring up and see what you guys think and this is in terms of the pity, but also in terms of gender and in terms of her family. So her family doesn't really get it, and I'm thinking in particular this is Act 3, Scene 1. So this is kind of right after. This is line 115 on page 527 in the book. Titus is talking about how upset this makes him, and Marcus says, perchance she weeps because they killed her husband, perchance because she knows them innocent. And my notes in my book say, what about her rape? What about her pain? Right? So Marcus is like, oh, I bet she's upset because they killed her husband. Franzi.
I think we can definitely see reflections of a very patriarchal society in here, and this is like what really upsets me throughout the entire play, because the only way a woman can rebel against that is kind of like becoming a martyr, which is not something you really want to become, and then also, or becoming someone like Tamara, which is kind of like becoming the monster, like the from Freud. So like this is really like what my problem with the plays, and I think that I don't know if you remember, but like in the very beginning, I said that Shakespeare is kind of sexist sometimes. I think it's because of this play that I thought so.
Okay, that's good to bring up. Right? Like types of women we have, right? We have Lavinia, who is, literally like they cut off her ability to speak, and they cut her tongue, or Tamara, who's the one who sort of initiates all of that. This sort of goes in line with what happens in other Shakespeare plays. In particular, I'm thinking of Coriolanus, which I know none of you have read. It's another Roman play. There are two female characters, and the two female characters are the mother, who's extremely strong to the extent that she, like, bullies her child into doing what she wants. So this sort of mother/father figure. And then the other character is the wife who cries the entire time. So we can think about that. Side note, when I was in the play of Coriolanus, I played the wife, so I cried the whole time. There's like 2 lines, which was good because the mother had like 100 lines to memorize. But so that's sort of what we get, right? And we can think of this is a warring culture, right? We've got like 40 children have died, things like that. Good. More along the line with this Lavinia kind of family connection, thinking about that. Anybody else want to add anything? Or we can move on. The next thing that we can do, so we talked about Lavinia's character development. Let's talk about her dad. What's the character development with Titus? We had Ashley before say Titus is losing it a little bit, right? What do we all got with Titus here now, Frenzy?
I think we kind of see the Lear factor coming in with Titus, so like I completely agree, he's definitely going crazy, and I also like what I saw with Aaron when he like knows that he's become a father. I feel like that also like that breaking like that turning point, Titus also has that definitely, and I think he even has that like already in Act 1 when he kills one of his sons, which is
Right.
really, which was like super interesting. That's what I like about the play, because it doesn't start like with we don't see Titus being like a super great character and then in the middle of the play going batshit crazy. Sorry. But then like it already happens in the beginning, so all we see from Titus is that he's just losing it, and he's like trying to keep it together, and he's like pressured by society because it's not recognized. I mean, and this reflects on modern society. How do we treat mental illness?
Oh, there's a lot there, you guys. A lot we can talk about. Let's start with one thing that Francie brought up that we can talk about with Titus. Francie said it's not like King Lear because we don't have as much of an evolution. We have Titus kind of losing it immediately. What do you guys think about that? What do you think that? And there's, of course, there's Lear references here, right? So we've got our father figure, important man who's going crazy. What do you think? Caleb, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. So along with that, Titus is in a little bit of is in a situation of power as well, whereas Lear was just kind of losing it, and he lost control of all of his facilities, and he was just like making stuff up, just random stuff. Titus is more kind of in this kind of grief situation, and he's still capable of some form of thinking. And he's in a position that he calls on the Goths especially, and instead of just kind of going crazy and floundering to the side, he's going to invade Rome.
Right. Yes, that is a good point. Lear, when he starts kind of losing it, he literally has nothing. He doesn't have a place to live. Titus has got some things he's drawing on.
So back to one of the original questions of what was most upsetting to me. For me, so coming at it from an animal rights perspective, the idea that like showing compassion to another species is that one of those first indicators that he's losing it. That was really upsetting. But I think it also does say something about the brutality of the culture they're living in. That like a small act of compassion or sympathy is viewed as being crazy.
Okay, so like not only does it bring in King Lear, but I also see King Richard III in here because like Richard III, I like to point out his schizophrenic tendencies. I kind of think Titus is leaning towards that because the fact that he's not necessarily having multiple personalities, but the fact that he laughs when he has nothing else to do, he doesn't know how to cry. I think that's a little scary in itself. And because of that, I think that will eventually lead him to schizophrenic tendencies because his mind is telling him, you're a sociopath, you can't cry. You have no sympathy. So that's...
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Ashley was saying to kind of just remember how Titus reacts to things, right? We're going to watch film clips on Thursday, and the film really draws that out well. Titus laughs a lot, and it's really, I mean, it's really upsetting. Okay, John, do you have something?
Yeah, I would say that's probably like the main difference between Titus and like King Lear is Titus is like the very first scene where he's like killing his son, you know, you could chalk up to just being a traditionalist, but even when he's finding out about his daughter's mutilation and stuff, he almost seems like he's forcing himself to act sad. Like, and there's even that line in there where he's like, if they did kill thy husband, then be joyful, because the law hath taken revenge on them. Like, he's almost trying to suppress his way of, you know, like his joy at this. Like, oh my goodness, if they really killed the husband, then we're in.
Yeah, right, and then we're in because now we can have revenge again, right? I think he's so wrapped up in this, like, this is what we're going to do next, and then we're going to do this. Yeah, definitely. Good. Mary, did you have something before? I thought you had your hand up.
I'm having a couple issues with my computer right now. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Okay, we'll just raise your hand if you need to jump back in. Okay, good. More stuff about this kind of Titus, warlike culture, Titus losing it. What's ahead? Haley.
Okay, so maybe not exactly with the warlike culture, but I find it interesting how Titus and Tamora have kind of switched places. Like at the beginning, Tamora was in the lower position. She just lost the war. Her son was just murdered in front of her. And now you see the tables have turned, and now Titus is the one who's losing everything to him. And Tamora is the one who's in the power, married to the emperor, just became empress. So I just find that interesting because, yes, it shows that he's slipping, like with every insult that happens to him, his daughter being raped, his sons all being killed. It just shows how that power is slipping from him and how he can't handle that when you'd seen that with Tamora earlier on. So.
Right. That's a great point. Let's talk more about that. Let's talk about where Tamara is in all of this, right? Haley says they have flipped places. So let's think about the balance of power and what's going on here. Ashley has something next to me.
Well, like you were saying, the balance of power thing, this also goes back to Measure for Measure with Angelo. He is in power, or well, he would like to stay, but then suddenly out of nowhere, the Duke comes back, and it's kind of the same. Like Titus wants to remain in power, but there's kind of a power struggle. So.
Good. Yeah. So Ashley said it's like Angelo kind of losing his power in Measure for Measure. So what do we got here? I mean, what's the power struggle? How is that making Tamara's character shift? Where is she at this point, do you think? Francie.
I mean, she's married to the most powerful man in the place. She's married to the empress. She's the empress. And she definitely is an empress that does not shy back from influencing her husband all the time. I'm thinking of Act 4, Scene 2, because she's really influencing him. Oh, not Scene 2, sorry. Scene 4. She's really influencing him in that scene where she talks to him about Titus. For example, in line 80, King, be thy thoughts imperious like thy name, is the sun dim that gnats to fly in it, and so on. So she's like taking like an active stance in politics, and which is interesting because the revenge kind of keeps Titus from doing that, and I'm pretty sure he did that before. So, But then on the other hand, he is working on his revenge, which would bring him power. So I feel like you can't really say it's shifted for good, because like there's so many different levels of power. So I don't know.
Right, yeah. And that's a really good point. That section, I think, is really key, because Saturninus, I mean, remember back in Act 1, Saturninus and his brother were fighting for power. So he was asserting himself very, very fine all by himself. And here, Tamra's sort of pushing him to do things, because right before Brandy started reading, Saturninus says, "Oh, this is from me." Right? Like, I think Lucius is gaining power. And Tamara, no, like, this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna talk to these people, and we'll make it okay. So she's poking at him to do things. Good. Other thoughts about where Tamara is at this point, or what? Well, we talked about this a little bit, but let's bring this back. What role Aaron has at this point? Right? So what we see from Aaron in these acts that we read today, he's sort of controlling the Titus cutting off his hand moment. Then he has this moment with his child. But, I mean, how has his kind of role or power shifted? Caleb.
Okay, so this also kind of ties in with the Tamora and her position right now. If somebody were to find out that she had an affair and that this child was born, there could be a complete 360 degree, like a complete 180, sorry, of her power, that she just loses it all because of this one little thing. Aaron also is kind of almost feeding off of Tamora's power, using her station to further his own gains. Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Anybody think? I mean, we don't compare directly, but where does Aaron fit in as sort of our villain in Shakespeare? We've had Iago kind of doing things behind the scenes. We have Richard III. I mean, let's think a little bit about Aaron as the villain.
I picture him as a darker, more evil version of Hulk, sort of behind the scenes, sort of. And because also this ethnicity sort of makes him this almost mythic figure, because he's sort of different, and I see like sort of parallel there between being a fairy and something not quite identifiable to the audience. So just sort of this very unique trickster character in the background.
All right, good. One comparison to Puck. Anybody else think about where he fits in? Where do he fit in your view of Iago, for example? Randy.
Yeah, actually, that's what I think. I think he's also I agree with the Puck comparison, but I also think he's very similar to Iago, because he works in the background, so it's definitely not a Richard III kind of villain. Comparing him to Iago, so we say Iago is very unattractive and in low power, and Aaron is black. I'm not saying he's unattractive, but he's definitely at an unfair disadvantage because of the way he looks. So I think the visual can come into play here. And then, I mean, of course, like just the play Othello in general, Othello kind of becomes the villain in a way because he kills Cordelia. And I mean, I think one just has to make the comparison of the two black characters in Shakespeare.
Right. Oh, definitely. I was going to say that for sure. I mean, we have to think about him in terms of Othello, because it is explicitly those are the only two black characters on Shakespeare. So we definitely should think about that. Here's my question with Aaron too, though. He's definitely a villain character in this play, but who is the villain of this play? And who's the hero? Go back to paper number 1, heroes and villains. This is a tragedy, so we got to talk about who's the hero, who's the villain. Think about it.
Well, the villain, capital V, I think it has to be just because of the talent. I don't really like the I had to choose one, I would say Lavinia, just for the sort of image that she has, of this sort of strong, non-suffering character in the background. She's one of the few people who's not actively harming anyone. All the actions she takes are more or less constructive. At this point, most of her energy is just about being with her family and communicating with them.
Okay, what do the rest of you think? So Lavinia, heroine-ish. Tamara, villainess. Uh-oh, we've got our two women pitted against each other. Francie.
I think Titus definitely thinks he's the hero.
Yes.
Also, I mean, come on, let's be honest. The play is named Titus Andronicus, so of course he's like the character we know most about. He's the protagonist, and I do the evil thing he does is he kills his son. But then when you look at the standards of Roman society, that wasn't considered evil because like he justifies it. Like so in his mind, that was the good thing to do. So I think I couldn't pick a villain and a hero in this play, but I think Titus thinks he's a hero, definitely.
I think that's a good point about Titus, because let's think about our other kind of tragic heroes, right? We have Othello, we have King Lear, right? They're not heroic throughout the entire play. So I think it's a lot like Othello in his, has the successful military background, but sort of is falling apart. So I like that sense. And of course, there's not an easy hero or villain, because part of what Francie said about Titus sort of being heroic is, he's doing this because he's justifying it for his family. So's Tamara, right? I mean, she's a successful military leader as well. So hard to go either way. Take.
Yeah, like what you said, I completely agree that it's hard to peg just one person as either a hero or a villain, because I think there's so many villains in this play. And I also think, like what you just said, like if you think about it, a lot of them are justified, kind of, not really, but in their mind, in their mind it is. I think that they justified themselves. So I think it's really hard to just peg one person as a major villain and one person as a heroine or a hero. Mm-hmm. But if I were, I'm team. Why can't I think of her name?
Lavinia.
Lavinia, yes, I'm
Team Lavinia. Yes, let's all be Team Lavinia. Good, and I like that. I like what he was kind of jokingly saying, like hero, kind of, not really. Like I think that's maybe how Shakespeare wants us to think. In most of these plays, right? There's obviously that's why I had you write your first paper about that, because it's not an easy yes or no. Okay, that sort of leads to one of my questions. I have two more things I want to talk about. One of them is, assuming that none of you have read Act 5 yet. If you have, then don't talk. But what is going to happen with our tragic heroes, our villains? What do you predict is going to happen? Remember that Beth said before, if we're following this sort of metamorphosis line, Lavinia in that text kills herself and ends up heroic. We're not exactly reading the metamorphosis. We've got references to it, so let's think about it. Beth, pass on.
So I'm basing this partially on the introduction that was in the beginning of the book. It talks about how this play really pits chaos against order, and how neither one is really a perfect solution, and how Titus sort of represents that order side of like following the rules and his idea of justice, even though it doesn't really make things work smoothly. He represents the sort of order in the world, whereas Tamara is the chaos, the savagery, the butchery. She's this just straight up vengeance and violence. And I think what the play is ultimately going to get at is that while the rule of law and order isn't perfect, it's at least better than look at all this carnage that happens when people just let themselves be ruled by their passions. So I think that in the end, one of the last characters standing is going to be Saturninus, because for their culture he would represent sort of the pinnacle of order, and he's that kernel of law and order that's going to survive and maybe give some hope to like the society moving forward.
Okay, so society moving forward. Remember that we have that in all of our Shakespeare tragedies. So one of the things you should think about is who's going to be left standing, because we gotta know who's going to move this society forward. Any other thoughts about that, Caleb?
So the play right now is really setting itself up to have a giant battle at this point. I mean, it's very obvious with the Goths moving on Rome. And I think that there's going to be a repeat at the beginning where Titus loses pretty much the remainder of his sons, and it kind of drives him crazy.
Crazier.
Crazier. And yeah, and I think that Lavinia is going to be the last one standing. It's just me.
Okay, so we didn't quite hear that. Who's going to be the last one standing?
Lavinia.
Lavinia, okay. I think I'm going to write these down, and we're going to talk about this next time. So, 1 vote for Lavinia, 1 for Saturninus. Who else? Haley.
Okay, so I say Lucius because, is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
You could say Lucius, or you could say Lucius, which is the British way.
Yeah, no, Lucius. I say him because looking back at the other plays we've seen through this semester, he kind of is that is it Cassio that was in Othello?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, he's kind of that character. He also plays which one was in King Lear? Edgar. He's kind of that naive, not in this case he's not naive, but he's that side character that is kind of there throughout the whole thing, but like I don't know how to explain it. He's just that side character.
Right, yeah, definitely, yeah. He's like peripheral to all of this. Francie.
I think he's also like the guy who survives Hamlet in the end. Which I don't know the name because we haven't read Hamlet in here, but sorry, but I did read it once, and he reminds me so much of that person because in Hamlet.
Horatio, yes.
Spoiler, but in Hamlet everyone dies, and
spoiler, Shakespeare tragedy. Yes.
But besides one person, so that's why I'm also rooting for Lucius.
Rooting for Team Lucius. Okay, Mary, what do you think?
I agree that it's probably going to be Lucius, but I would really like it to be Lavinia. But at this point, because of her injuries, the life that she's living right now, I don't think it's going to be her. I think Shakespeare is just going to put her out of her misery, and we're not going to have that character anymore. But again, with Lucius, how we're talking about how he's a peripheral character, I agree with that because I feel like he's a very neutral character in this. Like he's not really good or bad, but we haven't really seen much of him to decide that.
Right, neutral character. You're right. I mean, we have people who just sort of hang out in the background that end up saving the day at the end. Remember Albany from King Lear as well. Haley.
Okay, so I wanted to add that I don't think Lavinia is going to be the last one standing, if only because looking back at Othello and also King Lear, the character that has something bad done to them, in this case Desdemona and Cordelia, they're always the ones that end up dying for some reason. So I'm going to assume that that's the same here, and she's also going to be a character that dies.
Also, all the women die. Just saying.
Yeah, I will.
I agree with everyone who thinks Lavinia. Mainly because for one thing, she's already kind of a ghost. I'm just sort of looking at her as she's clearly modeled on Lucretia, and so Shakespeare, the audience is going to have that character in mind. They're going to see her as Lucretia. So with that, like knowledge of her character is kind of supposed to be done already, and the fact that she can't speak and she's having trouble communicating, that she's already sort of walking around like this ghost-like figure. So sort of to complete her storyline, she would have to die because she's already dead in a sense, and also because she's sort of this sacrificial figure. Like if I'm right about the chaos versus order thing, she's sort of as a Lucretia figure, like Lucretia has to die in order for the Roman mythology, for Rome to be established as the sacrificial lamb. Lavinia's going to have to follow that same line for peace to come. Lavinia's going to have to die and be the sacrifice.
Okay, no one has mentioned Titus yet, my friends. What do you think is going to our buddy Titus? Tate, did you have something with that?
Yes, and I'm gonna tie it in who I think is gonna be the last one standing.
Okay,
I think
good.
I think Titus is gonna die like very tragically, because if we're referring to the other plays, Othello, King Lear, usually the title characters don't end up alive.
Not in a Shakespeare tragedy.
Yeah, so I think he's gonna die, and I think this is a little bit of a stretch, but I think Tamara has a chance to stay alive, because I think she has this. I think she's kind of pulling the strings a little bit, and we're not really seeing that. I don't think people are seeing it in the play. So I feel like if she sticks it out, I feel like she could conquer Rome. I mean,
Conquer
I think
Rome!
she can. I don't love her, but I feel like she has the opportunity to.
All right, that would go against Francie thinking all the women die. But you know what the beautiful thing about this is? I am the only person who's read the end at this point, so I am just writing this all down for next time. What about Aaron? Any thoughts about him? And the baby, right? We still have the baby. Francie.
So I'm rooting for the baby, of course, because how could you not?
Hmm?
But for Aaron, I feel like, okay, so this is gonna be weird, but I feel like he's not gonna die, but he's gonna be punished because that's what happened in Othello as well, right?
Yes.
Iago, he went to prison, and like I remember we were debating about whether that's better than him being punished,
Right.
than him being
Right.
killed and everything. So I feel like because Aaron is now like kind of slowly advancing to be the super villain of it all, so like I feel like because death would literally be putting him out of his misery because that's what we said about Lavinia. So like, does he deserve that?
No, I agree. Right? And this, I think it's a case of someone like Iago. It's also a case of someone like Edmund, though. Remember Edmund in King Lear, right? The sort of becoming. Oh no, Francie's like, I don't remember Edmund in King Lear. We got a lot of plays going on. Yeah, but we'll think about that. We've got villains who live and villains who die, and we'll look at all of that. The last thing I want to think about just a little bit, we're going to talk more about this next time, is performance, right? So this is something that's very telling with this play. Since last time we were talking about this is a revenge tragedy, so what that means is there's a lot of death and blood, and I mean even in this section for today, the nurse is killed on stage, some hands are cut off. What are you thinking it should look like, or how is the visual matching what you think this play is about? You can also go back to, as well, what Lavinia visually looks like, right? Lavinia is on stage. They have cut off her hands and cut out her tongue. But how do you represent that? What do you do? That would be a good paper topic. Alec next to me, who has not shared his own thoughts with the social media world, said that would be a good paper topic. It would, my friends. Remember, paper topics. Yes. So, who has a thought? Visually representing the violence? What Lavinia looks like. Mary.
Personally, I think it's a little bit too gory to actually full out show everything, but I don't think it's a bad idea to actually show a little bit of gore. Maybe instead of like showing her hands just cut off completely, just always kind of have stumps on her with towel around it so that you kind of get the visual that she doesn't have hands, but at the same time, it's not as dramatic and horrifying as you would think. And personally, yeah.
Okay, yeah, good. I mean, that's definitely something that some productions do, is they will indicate that things have happened, but not show it. Beth is a whole over here.
Yeah, just thinking about the level of gore that we're willing to show, I kind of wonder how Shakespeare would have written this play if he'd written it in ancient Greece when they were actually using criminals to die. Like, whether he would be as willing to write such a gruesome story, and how far, if he had that resource available, would he have used that resource, or would he have found some way to use it?
I also think that like the part where it says that Aaron brings back 2 of Titus's son's heads. When I read that part, I automatically pictured 2 heads being brought back, and I'm just like, this sounds kind of weird, but that'd be really cool to portray that. Like, I could see somebody in a production like actually bringing that to life.
Right, yeah. And spit out the 2 heads like that. That is a very dramatic moment. That would say a lot. Francie, what do you think?
And especially like with today's TV culture, I do agree that having something like there, you have to show it in a way, and I think it's very hard not to cross the border between shocking and distasteful, but I feel like this is what I would attempt if I were to direct the play. Like, for example, I would definitely show that something's cut off, like from like that you would hear a thump on the like floor, and you would see something has fallen. I think you can do a lot with light here. And maybe like show some blood, like, but don't show like the stump and the blood splashing out, because that's just tacky.
Right. Oh, I think you're right. Right. And those of you who do research on the production history of this, you'll see that some people do that. Like, some people go like extreme horror movie, squirting blood tacky, and some people go completely the opposite with don't even barely mention it at all. So that's why we gotta keep thinking about this. Tate.
I totally agree with Francie. I think you can do a lot with lighting and sound effects, and I think that I would do more. I think I said this before. Do more like scarves, like resemble Lavina's hands with just like black scarves, black. I think that really symbolizes that it's not more of a, I mean, it is, physical pain, but it's also more of an emotional pain that she's going through as well. I think that dealing with scarves would really help symbolize that and show what pain she's going through, not just physically but emotionally.
Good. What I'm going to do next time is I have a book with some pictures of productions, and you'll see sort of the extremes, right, going back and forth. And this also has changed over time, right? During certain periods of history, people make it more bloody versus not, so we can think about that. We're also going to watch film clips next time with our good friend Anthony Hopkins as Titus, because he's one of our Shakespeare guys. And the movie is from 1999. It's based on a Broadway production, so it's the same director. So she has thought a lot about kind of the theatrical aspects of it, so it'll be interesting to think about it. John, did you have a thought, or are you just resting your hand? No thought. I'm not even gonna unmute. Okay, so I think that we are almost good to wrap up. Read Act 5 for next time. Also think about your paper. We're going to talk about your paper topics next time. But we can spare the YouTube world talking about your papers. I will let all of you kind of exit the hangout, and let's all wave goodbye to the YouTube world. Bye.